All right, welcome on in everyone to First CSP for another episode of the Sunday Special, a series that allows us to highlight some First CSP adjacent issues or sometimes produce updates to previous First CSP episodes. And that's exactly what we have here today. We're going to do a small update to our episode 143 for the Great Lakes Field Service Council. As it was brought up in the comments on that episode, there is some discrepancies with what's listed in our episode versus another website, the Gilwell First CSP website, which is not associated with us at all, but we do feel is another excellent resource for First CSPs. So, in that episode, we produced the first issue for Great Lakes Field Service Council, the SA1, and where the first issue is an activity issue, we also like to present the first regular issue, which ends up being the S17:1. And one of our commenters brought up the fact that on the Gilwell First CSP website, the first issue that's listed there, or the image that's listed there, is actually the SA17. If you look at modern collecting guides, it's listed as the SA17. Let's head over to the patch table because we do have here the SA17. The SA17 defined with its blue border, yellow background, brown fleur-de-lis, blue name. This was produced in 2013 for Friends of Scouting. It is listed in the collecting guide as an error. There's no elaboration on what the error is, although because also listed right there in the book with the SA17 is the S17:1, which we had already showed you, and has the tan background. It may be that the background color is what's considered the error here. Just showing you the back of the SA17. It is the Scout plastic back. And this gives us an opportunity to talk about, well, why does the Gilwell First CSP website list the SA17 as the first issue for the council? How does all of this work? And there's, I think, a couple of things that are potentially at play. First off, we have the information that the Great Lakes Council became the Great Lakes Field Service Council in 2012. It does seem as though that the authors of the collecting guides have made the determination then that the council's CSP issues began with those 2012 production runs. And the first 2012 production patch is the 100 Years of Eagle Scouts 2012 Traderie, which we showed in our episode 143. Now that CSP, when you look at the image, it does say Great Lakes and does not have the Field Service Council on it. I think one of those things that happens when councils do change, especially when you're moving from Great Lakes to Great Lakes Field Service, and I would think that the service area is relatively similar, so the leadership structure is going to transition pretty closely from the one council designation to the next. You know, those patches were kind of maybe in production approval, and then they actually came out, so they're being attributed to. One person did note that all of those first ones, you had the Traderie, and then you had some Philmont issues, all of which just say Great Lakes, and then you don't get to the first patch to say Great Lakes Field Service Council until this SA17. So there was some hypothesizing that that's why the Gilwell First CSP website decided to list that as the first issue. Now, one thing I would note is that website did at some point in the early 2000s stop getting updated. And I believe the time that it stopped being updated is pretty closely aligned to when these issues were coming out. So this was fresh information. There may not have been a collecting guide. Probably there was not a collecting guide that had listed out first issues so that everything had then designations assigned, what is the SA1, what is the SA17, etc. And you can see this because in the Gilwell website, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, the right hand side always has a key where it's listing this is the T1, this is the S1, this is the TA1, whatnot. There is no listing next to the Great Lakes first issue or the Great Lakes Field Service Council first issue because they didn't know what those were. My guess is they didn't know what those were going to be labeled at the time. So it's one of those things that early when councils have been formed and start producing issues, often it'll take a year or two for collectors and collecting guide authors to be able to line up, okay, what patches were produced, what order were they produced, what then labels should be assigned to each of those issues. I'm in several groups online, and oftentimes you'll see with the new councils, especially this last year here for 2025, we're talking about the new councils. Okay, how many patches came out? What order were they coming out? And people are trying to determine what those designations should be so that then the collecting guides in the future will have that order tracked. So I think this series with Great Lakes Field Service, that's kind of the issue there. I think at this point, we have now come to believe that the first issue is the SA1, the Traderee, which was in our episode 143. We believe the first regular issue is this S17:1. Now, it is true that the first patch that says Great Lakes Field Service Council is this SA17, but that's usually having the full council name on the patch has really never been historically a requirement to be listed as the first issue. There are some first issues that have imagery with, no reference to the council name, and then sometimes it's hard to go back and figure out which council that patch is even attributed to. So that certainly happens within the collecting realm as well. So a bit of a longer description here in this update. We did want to show you the SA17 and talk a bit about how over time, as more information comes out, or we realize that additional patches were produced, or what sometimes those designations or what is listed as the first issue or the first regular or just even the order of CSPs that are produced by any particular council may change over time because initially may not have all of the information at hand. Well, I hope that has been informative, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Sunday Special. We do produce these in addition to our first CSP new episodes on Sunday. So every Sunday, basically, you get two episodes. We'll have another Sunday Special next Sunday, but every day, again, including today, we've got a new episode of First CSP, so you can check that out as well. And then we hope we come back and see you tomorrow for another new episode of First CSP. Until then, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.